Be me. I'm the unofficial community liaison for Willow Creek Estates, a historic neighborhood nestled just outside the bustling city limits. My role is less formal title, more generational burden. I manage the labyrinthine, 50-year-old bylaws of the Willow Creek Preservation Committee, interpret the arcane local zoning codes, and generally act as the neighborhood's living archive. I've lived here my whole life, my family for generations. I know every crack in every cobblestone, every paragraph in every forgotten amendment. My job is to prevent chaos mostly. Be not me, Sterling Thorne, a man whose wealth could buy a small island, but who chose instead to buy the most ostentatious, modern reinterpretation, monstrosity this side of the creek. He moved in 6 months ago, immediately declared himself the arbiter of taste and progress, and somehow strong-armed his way onto the Preservation Committee. His stated goal: streamline Willow Creek's antiquated charm into a contemporary luxury experience. His real goal: push out anyone who doesn't fit his aesthetic. The man arrived like a wrecking ball in a velvet glove. His first act as a committee member was to propose a uniformity initiative. He wanted all exterior paint colors to be limited to a palette of 5 shades of gray. This, despite our neighborhood being famous for its vibrant, historically accurate Victorian and craftsman pastels. I pulled out the 1972 Charter, specifically Article III, Section 4B, which explicitly stated, homeowners retain full discretion over exterior color schemes, provided they adhere to a historically accurate aesthetic. He huffed, called it archaic, but conceded. First victory for old paper. A month later, he demanded the removal of all lawn ornaments exceeding 12 inches in height. This would have meant tearing down Mrs. Henderson's meticulously restored bird bath, a local landmark for decades. He called it clutter. I produced the original architectural drawings for Willow Creek, showing several homes, including Mrs. Henderson's, with integrated garden sculptures specifically highlighted. The bylaws were silent on standalone ornaments, but the historical precedence was clear. Willow Creek encourages artistic expression, I quoted from a faded pamphlet. He glowered, calling my tactics pedantic. The birdbath remained. His next grand pronouncement was that all mailboxes needed to be standardized, black, wall-mounted affairs. He found the varied, charming, often ornate mailboxes of the neighborhood visually jarring. My great-grandfather had personally carved the ornate oak mailbox on our own property. I quietly informed the committee that the Federal Postal Service dictates mailbox standards, not a neighborhood committee. Furthermore, many of our mailboxes were considered architectural features under the original covenants. He dismissed my concerns, claiming a simple aesthetic upgrade superseded such minor details. This particular fight festered, with him sending out official-looking compliance notices that lacked any legal standing. I advised everyone to ignore them, citing a lack of proper committee vote and authority. Things really began to fray when he tried to get the committee to sunset the annual community picnic and craft fair. He called it unsophisticated and suggested replacing it with a curated garden party for select residents. The picnic was a 50-year tradition, a core part of our community identity, explicitly mentioned in the original neighborhood charter as an annual gathering to foster community spirit and celebrate local artisans. His attempts to undermine it met with universal disdain from the long-term residents. He took this as a personal affront, directing his spite towards me. The major incident came just after the picnic, a week later. My service dog, Buster, a calm, intelligent golden retriever, is my medical alert dog. He's with me everywhere. Thorne, seeing Buster as another unrefined element in his manicured vision, decided Buster had to go. He cornered me after a committee meeting. Your dog, while perhaps helpful, does not fit the refined aesthetic we are cultivating, he stated, arms crossed. I am proposing an amendment to the bylaws. No pets over 20 pounds allowed in common areas or visible from the street. I explained calmly that Buster was a certified service animal, not a pet. His presence was protected by federal law, the Americans with Disabilities Act. He scoffed. Federal law is for airports and public buildings, not private, self-governing communities. Our bylaws supersede. And besides, your dog causes undue noise with his occasional barks. A nuisance. This was a lie. Buster rarely barks. Thorne was making it personal. He explicitly told me he would bring it to a vote at the next committee meeting, pushing for an immediate enforcement clause. He even suggested that my continued residence in Willow Creek might be problematic if I couldn't comply with evolving community standards. He tried to frame it as a necessary step for the beautification of the neighborhood. I tried one last time to reason with him, explaining that any attempt to restrict a legitimate service animal would open the committee to severe legal repercussions. He waved me off, dismissing my warnings as scare tactics from a Luddite. He then said, with a dismissive flick of his hand, that he was also putting forth a motion to modernize the Willow Creek welcome signage. He wanted to replace the antique hand-carved wooden sign, a true historic artifact and our neighborhood's actual namesake, with a sleek, minimalist steel and glass monument. He'd already commissioned the design, bypassing all protocols. This neighborhood needs to project an image of modern affluence, not dusty nostalgia, he declared. He was going to push this vote through along with the dog ban, a package deal. It's time to shake things up, he smirked. That was the breaking point. The service dog, yes, but also the sign. The sign was a historical landmark, explicitly designated as such by the city's Historic Preservation Board decades ago. Thorne was not just overreaching. He was stepping into a minefield of federal, state, and city regulations. He was so confident in his wealth and his perceived influence that he believed he could simply overwrite decades of established practice and protected status. He thought he could outmaneuver me, that my expertise was merely opinion. I went into read-only mode. No more arguments, no more explanations. I simply observed and documented. Every single interaction with Thorne from that moment forward was recorded. Emails, texts, phone call summaries, meeting minutes. I cross-referenced his pronouncements against the original 1972 Willow Creek Estates Charter, the 1985 amendment regarding historical preservation, the 1999 City Ordinance establishing Willow Creek as a protected historic zone, and the 2005 State Statute on Disability Rights in Private Communities. The 1972 Charter had a critical loophole, the Advisory Capacity Clause. It stated that the Preservation Committee was formed primarily to advise and assist residents in maintaining the historic integrity of Willow Creek Estates. Actual enforcement power, beyond basic maintenance, required unanimous consent of all registered homeowners for any significant alteration to community infrastructure or bylaws that impact the historical nature of the estate. The committee could make recommendations, but changing a landmark sign or banning a service animal fell far outside their advisory scope without explicit, universal homeowner approval and city approval for historical changes. Thorne was operating under the assumption the committee was the ultimate authority, an assumption I had often corrected to his irritation. I spent hours poring over the fine print. I found the original paperwork designating the Willow Creek welcome sign as a protected historical artifact by the city's Historic Preservation Board, meaning any alteration would require a specific permit and public review process, something Thorne had completely ignored. I found the specific ADA guidance for service animals in HOAs, reinforcing that his proposed ban was illegal. I prepared 2 thick binders. Binder 1 contained every interaction with Thorne: dates, times, summaries, transcripts. His demands regarding paint colors, lawn ornaments, mailboxes, the picnic, my polite, fact-based rebuttals, his dismissals of my warnings. Binder 2 was the arsenal: the 1972 Charter, the 1985 Amendment, the 1999 City Ordinance, the 2005 State Statute, the ADA Guidelines, and crucially, the specific document from the city's Historic Preservation Board designating the welcome sign as a protected landmark. I added printouts of Thorne's proposed new sign design, which was explicitly not historically compliant. The day of the meeting arrived. The community room was packed. Thorne sat at the head of the table, radiating an oily confidence. He began by presenting his welcome sign modernization project, complete with glossy renderings of the sleek, cold steel and glass monument. He spoke for 15 minutes about progress and branding, completely bypassing any discussion of historical context or community input. He then moved directly to the pet policy adjustment, painting Buster and other service animals as distractions and potential liabilities. He pushed for an immediate vote on both proposals. All those in favor of these forward-thinking initiatives? Thorne boomed, looking around expectantly. A few hands went up tentatively, new residents he'd charmed or pressured. Most of the long-term residents, including myself, kept our hands firmly down. Excellent, he said, tallying a meager 5 votes out of 17 committee members present. The motion passes. We'll proceed with ordering the new sign and drafting notices regarding the pet policy. Excuse me, Mr. Thorne, I interjected, my voice calm but cutting through the murmurs. For the record, a supermajority of the elected committee members is required for any significant bylaw alteration. Furthermore, Article III, Section 7 of the 1972 Charter states that any alteration to community infrastructure or bylaws impacting the historical nature of the estate requires unanimous consent of all registered homeowners. Not just the committee, Thorne scowled. Your antiquated interpretations are irrelevant. The committee has spoken. Actually, Mr. Thorne, I continued, the City of Willow Creek Historic Preservation Board might disagree, and the Department of Justice. I stood up, binder 2 in hand. The Willow Creek welcome sign is a designated historic landmark under City Ordinance 1999-3A. Any alteration without explicit city permit and public review is a violation, incurring fines up to $50,000 per offense. Your commissioned design is also in direct violation of the historical aesthetic guidelines for our district. I laid out the relevant documents. Gasps filled the room. Thorne's face went pale. Preposterous, you're making this up. I assure you I am not, I replied, then turned to the other committee members. Furthermore, regarding the pet policy adjustment, this directly contravenes the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title III, Section 36.104, which protects service animals like Buster. Any attempt to restrict his presence is not only illegal, but opens the committee, and by extension, all property owners, to significant federal litigation. I presented the ADA guidelines. This is an ambush, Thorne sputtered, pounding the table. You withheld this information. I merely advised you repeatedly, Mr. Thorne, I said, opening binder 1. On numerous occasions, I warned you about procedural violations, historical bylaws, and legal repercussions. Each time, you dismissed my concerns as pedantic or archaic. Here are the dates and times of those conversations, along with your exact words. I read through a few particularly damning quotes from his dismissals. My role is to advise and prevent chaos. When that advice is ignored, it becomes my duty to ensure the legal integrity of Willow Creek Estates is maintained. The entire room was silent. Thorne slumped in his chair. The mayor, who had been quietly observing from the back, stood up, phone in hand. Mr. Thorne, the mayor said, his voice grim. It seems the city's Historic Preservation Board and their legal team will be paying you, and the Willow Creek Preservation Committee, a visit first thing in the morning. And perhaps the Department of Justice will be interested in the service animal situation. The fallout was swift and spectacular. The city's Historic Preservation Board issued an immediate cease and desist order on the sign project. They levied a provisional fine of $25,000 on the Willow Creek Preservation Committee for procedural violations and for attempting to unlawfully alter a protected landmark. They also stated their intent to revoke Willow Creek's self-governing status, returning all zoning and architectural review to the city due to demonstrable failure to uphold historical preservation mandates and consistent disregard for established legal processes. The Department of Justice, after a prompt complaint filed by a local disability advocacy group I had preemptively contacted, confirmed the proposed service animal ban was a clear violation of the ADA. They opened an investigation, citing potential discrimination and civil rights violations. The local news picked up the story, framing it as wealthy newcomers' arrogance leads to historic preservation disaster. Thorne, in an attempt to save face, tried to pin the blame squarely on me for failing to properly inform the committee. My binders, filled with time-stamped evidence of his dismissals, put an end to that narrative. Update 1. 3 weeks after the meeting, the Willow Creek Preservation Committee, stripped of its self-governing powers, was dissolved. All architectural and zoning decisions for Willow Creek estates are now handled directly by the city. The $25,000 fine stood, and all existing homeowners were facing an assessment to pay it. Thorne, however, was held personally liable for a substantial portion of the fines due to his deliberate disregard for procedure and direct orders for the sign. The Department of Justice investigation is ongoing, but early reports indicate a hefty settlement is imminent. Update 2. 6 weeks later, Thorne sold his modern reinterpretation home at a significant loss. Turns out, nobody wants to buy a house in a historic district whose former owner single-handedly stripped the community of its autonomy and incurred massive fines. The new owners, a lovely couple who appreciate Willow Creek's unique charm, are already talking about painting the exterior a historically accurate robin's egg blue. Buster and I sent them a welcoming gift basket. Update 3. 3 months out, the City Council, in a rare show of efficiency, decided to further reinforce Willow Creek's historic status. They designated the original welcome sign, along with Mrs. Henderson's bird bath and several other historically significant community features, including our carved mailbox, as permanent, untouchable landmarks. Thorne was eventually forced to pay a substantial settlement in the Ada case, which was donated to several local disability advocacy groups. His name is mud in every reputable social circle in this part of the state. He tried to move to another historic community in a neighboring county, but his reputation preceded him, and his application was mysteriously denied. Karma, it seems, has a long memory, especially in old neighborhoods.